Welcome to another edition of Christ Over Coffee. I'm Pastor Chris Byers of St. John's Lutheran Church in beautiful Gillett, Wisconsin, and glad to be with you here as we continue on through our study. We're going to be going on again through Genesis. We are at the 41st chapter. We just gotten to the point where Joseph interpreted the dreams of the cupbearer and the baker, and they've been restored. Actually, the cupbearer has been restored to his position with Pharaoh, and the baker has had his head lifted, and he has had his fate given to him. So we're going to continue on with this. I hope you've been enjoying this very much here. One thing that was pointed out in last night's class, which we do meet every Monday. If you're in Gillett, come join us Mondays. We go from 6 p.m. until 7:30. We go through and we just talk through this, and then I do a quicker overview as we are going, covering the material. But you do get a little fuller as your class. And one of the things that was pulled out of last week's that somebody mentioned at the class as they were reading, and they talked about as we go earlier with Isaac and when he's with Rebecca, and and he says that Rebecca's his sister, and it talks about how they laughed and all of that. And he uses that same, which means actually they're showing more than just laughter. They were in a very flirtatious way. So that way the king, knew that Rebecca was not the sister, but was the wife. And we see that as we go through. You'll get to see some of that little bit of wordplay that tends to be out there. So when we think about, as we look, it's kind of fun as those things start to come to life in here. We also will see here, and we'll talk about more of some of those things where God is working in here and connecting to other portions, showing His hand is fully at work in everything here. Now, it happened at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh had a dream, and behold, he was standing by the Nile. So for 2 years after Joseph did this, the cupbearer had not thought once about Joseph. So, and lo, from the Nile there came up 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they grazed in the marsh grass. Then behold, 7 other cows came up after them from the Nile, ugly and gaunt, and they stood by the other cows on the bank of the Nile. And the ugly and gaunt cows ate up the 7 sleek and fat cows. Then Pharaoh awoke, and he fell asleep, and dreamed a second time. And behold, 7 ears of grain came up on a single stalk, plump and good. Then behold, 7 ears, thin and scorched by the east wind, sprouted up after them. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump and full ears. Then Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. Now it came about in the morning that his spirit was troubled, so he sent and called for the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men, and Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was no one who could interpret them to Pharaoh. Then the chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh, saying, I would make mention today of my own offenses. I would make mention today of my own offenses. Pharaoh was furious with his servants, and he put me in confinement in the house of the captain of the bodyguard, both me and the chief baker. And we had a dream on the same night, he and I, each of us dreamed according to the interpretation of his own dream. Now a Hebrew youth was with us, a servant of the captain of the bodyguard, and we related them to him. And he interpreted our dreams for us. To each one he interpreted according to his own dream. And it came about that just as he interpreted for us, so it happened. He restored me in my office, but he hanged him. Now, in this, where you have to realize now, the Egyptian, the Pharaoh and the Egyptians, they're seeing this as a divination, magic. So they're used to being able to interpret these types of dreams. Now, understand here that the understanding of this world was much different than where Joseph comes in on this. But they're seeing it as this is Joseph's power. He's greater than the magicians. However, we see this change here because Joseph, he's matured a lot, and God has been working heavily on his spirit, his heart. So it goes on. Then Pharaoh sent and called for Joseph, and they hurriedly brought him out of the dungeon. And when he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he came to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, but no one can interpret it. And I have heard it said about you, that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. So here Pharaoh is putting it into a special power that Joseph has. But see, we're going to see this turn here quickly. Joseph then answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. So here Joseph is saying, it's not me, it's God. God is the one that is interpreting these things. So it's not some magic. So we want to understand this because there are those that work with spirits that are not of God. And not to say, there is a whole spiritual realm out there. There are demons and those that are out there that are tricking and deceiving. So it's not saying, hey, we're going to do Joseph and we're going to have the Christian or the Jewish or the mystic. We're going to have the one true God tarot cards and Ouija board. We're the true God. No, those are things we stay away from. So it's not saying you're not going to find you don't go find a book that says here the Christian interpretation of dreams or biblical interpretation of dreams. No, that's not what we're doing here. Now God will give dreams, and He will give those that can interpret dreams. For His purposes, and that doesn't mean they can do it all the time and set up a booth or a table and charge a fee for these things. No, that's not what happens here. This is something where God can use these things, but He wants us to look to Him and Him alone, not going to someone else to do these things. We realize that Pharaoh is not a person of God. He doesn't believe in the one true God. He sees himself as a God. So let us be reminded of that as we look ahead. Because there are those movements that will try and twist this to make it about, well, God gives us the power. When we look and we pray to Him, He'll give us the power to interpret dreams. No, that's not what it's saying here. All right. And he said, Joseph then answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. Okay. So Pharaoh spoke to Joseph in my dream. Behold, I was standing on the bank of the Nile. Behold, 7 cows, fat and sleek, came out of the Nile, and they grazed in the marsh grass. And lo, 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ugly and gaunt, such as I had never seen for ugliness in all the land of Egypt. And the lean and ugly cows ate up the first 7 fat cows. Yet when they had devoured them, it could not be detected that they had devoured them, for they were just as ugly as before. Then I awoke. So that would be a disturbing dream. 1, the appearance, but 2, the other that they consumed the other cows. I saw also in my dream, and behold, 7 ears full and good came up on a single stalk. And lo, 7 ears withered thin and scorched by the east wind sprouted up after them. And the thin ears swallowed the 7 good ears. Then I told it to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me. Now Joseph said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's dreams are one and the same. God has told to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are one and the same. And the 7 lean and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 thin ears, scorched up by the east wind, shall be 7 years of famine. It is as I have spoken to Pharaoh. God has shown to Pharaoh what he is about to do. Behold, 7 years of great abundance are coming in all the land of Egypt. And after them 7 years of famine will come, and all the abundance will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine will ravage the land. So the abundance will be unknown in the land because of that subsequent famine, for it will be very severe. Now, as for the repeating of the dream to Pharaoh twice, it means that the matter is determined by God, and God will quickly bring it about. So here we have this answer. He's saying this is what is happening. This is 7 years of abundance, 7 years of famine. God is giving you a sign to prepare for the people. Prepare for the people of Egypt and also the surrounding places. And now let Pharaoh look for a man discerning and wise and set him over the land of Egypt. So he's saying, find someone that is discerning and wise and give him power over this to be able to help you. He's not saying, see, this is not about, Joseph isn't making it about himself. He's making it about God, and he's not saying, God told me to tell you to make me that wise and discerning person. So there's some humility that definitely is going on. So as we're looking here, this is going to be 14 years, 7 years of good, 7 years of bad. Let Pharaoh take action to appoint overseers in charge of the land, and let him exact a fifth of the produce of the land of Egypt in the 7 years of abundance. So let's take 20% of all that's produced, and that is going to be your tax. And then let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming, and store up the grain for food in the cities under Pharaoh's authority, and let them guard it. And let the food become as a reserve for the land for 7 years of famine, which will occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish during the famine. Now the proposal seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his servants. All right, so here it sounds like he's laid out a good plan. Pharaoh says, Then Pharaoh said to his servants, Can we find a man like this, in whom is a divine spirit? So he's saying, wow, you are greater than all my magicians. You have God with you. So could I find anybody better than you? In many ways here, Pharaoh is somewhat humbling himself to the one true God. Yet he doesn't fully, as you understand, he doesn't fully humble himself. But he sees, he understands that there's something different about Joseph, especially compared to everybody else that are his magicians and those that are his religious authorities that are under his charge. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, Since God has informed you of all this, there is no one so discerning and wise as you are. You shall be over my house, and according to your command all my people shall do homage. Only in the throne I will be greater than you. So he doesn't fully humble himself beneath the authority of God through Joseph. He retains his own authority. He still wants to be the powerful God king, the Pharaoh. So he's not converting to the believe and follow the one true God. He's going and he's taking another path. He's following he's allowing Joseph to be over, but not 100%. So he's in some ways Pharaoh is taking some of that glory to himself too, right? How wise and discerning I am, so because I have placed him under my authority, but he has authority over everything just below me. All right. So, and Pharaoh said to Joseph, See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took off his signet ring from his hand. That's his signature. What he would do is he would take that signet ring and in wax, and he would press his signet in there, that ring in there, and that was his signature to mark that it was an official document or official decree of Pharaoh. So he's giving him that power, as well as, and put it on Joseph's hand, and clothed him in garments of fine linen, and put the gold necklace around his neck. So he set him up. He's wearing all the signs of one of Pharaoh's power. And he made him ride in his second chariot. So he's in the chariot in the only second to Pharaoh's. And they proclaimed before him, bow the knee, and he set him over all the land of Egypt. So he made him a pharaoh or a lord over Egypt. In the sense he made him his second in command, had all the authority and power of Pharaoh, except not over Pharaoh. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, though I am Pharaoh, yet without your permission, no one shall raise his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. So he is saying, I'm Pharaoh, but you have all authority over the people. They aren't going to do anything unless you say, if you say jump, they're going to ask, how high? Then Pharaoh named Joseph Zaphenath Paneah, and he gave him Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, his wife. Now I find this to be one of those fun little twists of where God is at work, because you remember it was the wife of Potiphar that put him in prison, and now a priest by the name of Potiphera is giving him his daughter as his wife. So we're seeing how God is turning things and working things, pointing us, look at the back, look at what happened, but see, that evil that was done now is being, it's showing the good that I have in store, because had he stayed in that guard's house, had that not happened and not been sent to prison or jail, he never would have been to this position of authority, because now he is even above him, being a Potiphar and Potiphar's wife. All right. And Joseph went forth over the land of Egypt. Now Joseph was 30 years old, so this is 13 years from the time he was sold into slavery to now. For 13 years he has grown, and now he is just under Pharaoh. Went from a Hebrew thrown into a pit by his brothers, to a slave, to a prisoner, to now Pharaoh's second in command. All right. And during the 7 years of plenty, the land brought forth abundantly. So he gathered all the food of these 7 years, which occurred in the land of Egypt, and placed the food in the cities. He placed in every city the food from its own surrounding fields. Thus Joseph stored up grain in great abundance like the sand of the sea, until he stopped measuring it, for it was beyond measure. I mean, I just can't imagine. This was such an abundance of grain. I remember, and this had been put into large storage, kept safe, kept dry, kept away from animals, rats, rodents, vermin of any sort. They had to protect it. They had to keep it. And it was in these vast, I remember in the 80s growing up, I shared this in class. I remember we had an overabundance of grain, so much that the market bottomed out. Farmers couldn't make a penny. They couldn't sell it because if they lost money just selling it. And it came to they had their insurance, and a declaration was declared, and they were told, if you want to be paid to be able to keep your farms afloat, you can't sell this grain, because we cannot flood the marketplace with all this grain. It'll destroy the markets. And I remember seeing piles of grain on the sides of fields just rotting. Now the sad irony of it all is, during this time, that was when there was a famine in Ethiopia, and people were starving, and it just seemed so sinful. But I could just imagine, because that was such an abundance of grain that it was in the eyes of the world was worthless in essence, because there was just too much. And even with that, though, we still had people starving in different parts of the world. That's the irony of, and that's the sin. But anyway, so I could just imagine how vast these storage bins had to have been to hold such an amount of grain. It had to have been huge. I'm sure if we were to start digging around these areas, we would probably find remains of very large grain storage places that fell into disrepair, and probably the large part of them went back to the earth. But here we have this huge amount. Now, before the year of the famine came, two sons. Before the year of the famine came, two sons were born to Joseph, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore to him. And Joseph named the firstborn Manasseh, for he said, God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household. And he named the second Ephraim, for he said, God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. So realizing that this was a land that was meant to be his undoing, it was meant to be his punishment, so to speak, from his brothers. But it has been a fruitful blessing for him. When the 7 years of plenty, which had been in the land of Egypt, came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began to come, just as Joseph had said, then there was famine in all the lands. But in all the land of Egypt there was bread. So when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried out to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, go to Joseph, whatever he says to you, you shall do. So he's saying, hey, I've got Joseph for this. You talk to him. Don't come to me. Don't come crying to me. Talk to Joseph. All right. When the famine was spread over all the face of the earth, then Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, and the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. And the people of all the earth came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph, because the famine was severe in all the earth. Now, when we read this, thinking all the earth, understanding what the way that is being said, all the earth would have been all the known world to them at the time. Of course, they didn't have people coming from North America or the farthest reaches of Asia, though there could have been some, or even Europe on that time. But all the earth, all the known world, everywhere that knew Egypt knew that they had abundance. So this is what we have to understand. Now Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt, and Jacob said to his sons, why are you staring at one another? Now this is a question that was arise. As you'll notice in here, and let's think about this, it goes between Jacob and Israel are used interchangeably throughout this portion of Scripture. As you find, you will read that. And you'll also find throughout Scripture when I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is more commonly. You'll hear when God gives his name, or it lets people know who he is. But you can also find at times they'll say Israel. All right. Okay. And he said, all right. Now Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt. Jacob said to his son, why are you staring at one another? Why are you navel gazing? Why are you doing nothing? And he said, behold, I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us from that place, so that we may live and not die. Then 10 brothers of Joseph went down to buy grain from Egypt. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he said, I am afraid that harm may befall him. So we know that Joseph's 17. We don't know exactly how old, Joseph was 17 when he was taken. We don't know exactly how old Benjamin was at this point, but we know he's the youngest of them all. But his father's still very protective of him because he's the second child from his favorite wife, Rachel. And Rachel's dead. She died giving birth to Benjamin. And Joseph, in his mind, he is dead. So he's very protective of Benjamin. So he's not going to allow Benjamin to go. Though he's not a little child, he's a younger man. He's still very protected by Dad. So the sons of Israel came to buy grain among those who were coming, for the famine was in the land of Canaan also. Now Joseph was the ruler over the land. He was the one who sold to all the people of the land, and Joseph's brothers came and bowed down to him with their faces to the ground. When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he disguised himself to them and spoke to them harshly. And he said to them, "Where have you come from?" And they said, "From the land of Canaan, to buy food." But Joseph had recognized his brothers, although they did not recognize him. They weren't expecting to see their brother Joseph in this position, of course. He was 30 years old, so 13 years had passed. He looked different. He disguised himself. He probably was speaking the Egyptian language at the time to them, and he was speaking that directly and was working through a translator because he was that official, so they wouldn't recognize his voice. Even though he could understand them, he probably wasn't speaking Hebrew to them at that time. And Joseph remembered the dreams which he had about them, and said to them, "You are spies. You have come to look at the undefended parts of our land." So he's remembering how cruel they were, but also remembering the dream and there's a testing that's going on here. Then they said to him, "No, my lord, but your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants are not spies." Yet he said to them, "No, you have come to look at the undefended parts of our land." But they said, "Your servants are 12 brothers in all, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is with our father today, and one is no more." So here they reveal right off the bat, no, we're just 12. We're of 12 brothers. One is at home, and one is no longer with us. One is no more. He's gone. He's dead, as far as we know. He's no longer with us. And Joseph said to them, "It is as I said to you, you are spies. By this you will be tested by the life of Pharaoh. You shall not go from this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you, that he may get your brother, while you remain confined, that your words may be tested, whether there is truth in you. But if not, by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies." So he put them all together in prison for 3 days. Now Joseph said to them on the 3rd day, "Do this and live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers be confined in your prison. But as for the rest of you, go, carry grain for the famine of your households, and bring your youngest brother to me, so your words may be verified. You shall not die." And they did so. Now, as you think of this, you have to also wonder, Joseph probably had a hard time keeping a straight face, I would think, saying, "Yeah, we are honest men." But he goes on and he puts him in jail for 3 days. Then he says, I believe in God. My heart has changed, and you need to feed your families, but you still need to do what I ask." All right. And they did. They said to one another, "Truly we are guilty concerning our brother, because we saw the distress of his soul when he pleaded with us, yet we would not listen. Therefore this distress has come upon us." And Reuben answered them, saying, "Did I not tell you? Do not sin against the boy," and you would not listen. Now comes the reckoning for his blood. They did not know, however, that Joseph understood, for there was an interpreter between them. Now this is saying, so he never spoke Hebrew with them. He spoke through this interpreter. So they had no clue that he had a full understanding of Hebrew and knew everything that they were saying. All right. They did not. Okay. And he turned away from them and wept. So he's hearing that there's a change. There's some in their heart. They're feeling like they know they did something wrong. All right. But then when he returned to speak to them and spoke to them, he took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. Then Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain and to restore every man's money in his sack, and to give them provisions for their journey. And thus it was done for them. So he still is being very kind, but he took one of the brothers that plotted for his sale and all the evil, and put him in prison, bound him up as the one that would be held. And then also made sure that they were taken care of. So they loaded their donkeys with their grain and departed from there. And as one of them opened his sack to give his donkey fodder at the lodging place, he saw his money, and behold, it was in the mouth of his sack. Then he said to his brothers, My money has been returned, and behold, it is even in my sack. And their hearts sank, and they turned trembling to one another, saying, What is this that God has done to us? So there they think, oh, he's taken our brother as a slave. We're never going to see Simeon again. When they came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them, saying, the Lord of the land, spoke harshly with us and took us for spies of the country. But he said to them, We are honest men, we are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is with our father today in the land of Canaan. And the Lord of the land, said to us, By this I shall know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me, and take grain for the famine of your households, and go. But bring your youngest brother to me, that I may know that you are not spies, but honest men. I will give your brother to you, and you may trade in the land. So there's the agreement that's set out there. Now it came about, as they were emptying their sacks, that behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when they and their father saw their bundles of money, they were dismayed. And their father Jacob said to them, You have bereaved me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more. So he's writing off Simeon. And you would take Benjamin? All these things are against me. Now I have 2 sons that are no more. Because he believes Joseph to be dead, and he's writing off Simeon as if dead. Then Reuben spoke to his father, saying, You may put my 2 sons to death if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my care, and I will return him to you. But Jacob said, My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he alone is left. If harm should befall him on the journey you are taking, then you will bring my gray hair down to Sheol in sorrow. You will be the death of me. If he is taken, this is my Benjamin. He's the only other son of my beloved Rachel. So I'm sure the other 10 brothers are really would feel great. The 9 that are hearing this, oh yeah, great. Simeon doesn't matter, but Benjamin and Joseph are your prizes. Now the famine was severe in the land. So it came about, when they had finished eating the grain which they had brought from Egypt, that their father said to them, Go back, buy us a little food. And it seems, here you have to think about Jacob, Israel. And if you notice, it does go back and forth. Now, a good study on that, if you ever thought of that, would be one that was brought up is why. Yeah, but that would take a lot of study to figure out why. Is he acting more in the authority of Israel when he's spoken of Israel and the country and the people? And then as Jacob, he's more of his old self. That would be a good study to really get into. All right, so Judah spoke to him, however, saying, The man solemnly warned us, You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you send our brother with us, we will go down and buy you food. But if you do not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. Now, they've also written off Simeon at this point, because they see no point in going there, because they'll just be imprisoned with Simeon. So they'd be lost and their families would get nothing. That's where they're coming. They're coming very strongly in this mentality here. All right. Then Israel said, Why did you treat me so badly by telling the man whether you still had another brother? But they said, the man questioned particularly about us and our relatives, saying, Is your father still alive? Have you another brother? Now, We know from what they said to Joseph that's not exactly how it came to be. Because they gave it all out in one statement, all of them. But now they're kind of pulling it back. They're changing it a little because now their dad's pushing on there, so they now have to justify why it was revealed that they had a younger brother at home, and all of this. Why did that have to come out? So they're putting it on, saying, "Oh, the Lord of the land did this." The overseer, he was a tough one. He pushed us, so we just gave it. But they do have one fair point on this. And have you another? So we answered his questions. Could we possibly know that he would say, "Bring your brother down," which is a fair question. I mean, and you could tell when they said it, they were just saying the truth about themselves. But now they're trying to make it as if, well, we need to press this a little. Dad's not happy, and we can't just say we blurted it out. So, and Judah said to his father Israel, "Send the lad with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, we as well as you and our little ones. I myself will be surety for him. You may hold me responsible for him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame before you forever. For if we had not delayed, surely by now we could have returned twice." So here he's offering security, but he's also kind of scolding his father, saying, "Hey, we could have been back in there twice already. Benjamin will be fine." We already have Reuben who offered security on that. Now we have Judah. So this is where it moves. Then their father Israel said to them, "If it must be so, then do this. Take some of the best products of the land in your bags and carry down to the man as a present a little balm and a little honey, aromatic gum and myrrh, pistachio nuts and almonds." So they had some there, but it wasn't good sustaining food. So here they're going. Here's a gift to show our sincerity and our appreciation for doing business with them. So take this with them. And then it says, "And take double the money in your hand. Take back in your hand the money that was returned in the mouth of the sacks. Perhaps it was a mistake. Take your brother also, and arise, return to the man. And may God Almighty grant you compassion in the sight of the man, that he may release to you your brother and Benjamin. And as for me, if I am bereaved of my children, I am bereaved." So he's given up. He knows if they do nothing, they're all going to starve anyway. So the men took this present and they took double the money in their hand, and Benjamin. Then they arose and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to his house steward, "Bring the men into the house and slay an animal and make ready, for the men are to dine with me at noon." So the man did as Joseph said and brought the men to Joseph's house. Now the men, his brothers, were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house, and they said, "It is because of the money that was returned in our sacks the first time that we are being brought in, that he may seek occasion against us and fall upon us and take us for slaves with our donkeys. We are undone," is their feeling. All right. So they came near to Joseph's house steward and spoke to him at the entrance of the house and said, "O my lord, we indeed came down the first time to buy food, and it came about when we came to the lodging place that we opened our sacks, and behold, each man's money was in the mouth of his sack, our money in full. So we have brought it back in our hand. We have also brought down other money in our hand to buy food. We do not know who put our money in our sacks." He said, "Be at ease, do not be afraid. Your God, the God of your father, has given you treasure in your sacks. I had your money." Then he brought Simeon out to them. Then the man brought the men into Joseph's house and gave them water, and they washed their feet, and he gave their donkeys fodder. So they prepared the present for Joseph's coming at noon, for they had heard that they were to eat a meal there. When Joseph came home, they brought into the house to him the present which was in their hand, and bowed to the ground before him. Now he's seeing this as the fullness of the vision, the dreams he had so many years ago. His brothers are again bowing before him. Then he asked them about their welfare, and said, "Is your old father well, of whom you spoke? Is he still alive?" And they said, "Your servant our father is well. He is still alive." And they bowed down in homage. Now that also says in some they prostrate themselves. That means they were down low. They were on their knees. They were putting their face to the ground. They could have also put their bellies to the ground. They were laying themselves fully low before him. That's what they're saying. That they are prostrate before him. They're laying low. They're giving homage. Let's see. As he lifted his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, he said, "Is this your youngest brother of whom you spoke to me?" And he said, "May God be gracious to you, my son." And Joseph hurried out, for he was deeply stirred over his brother, and he sought a place to weep. And he entered his chamber and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out, and he controlled himself and said, "Serve the meal." So they served him by himself, and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat bread with the Hebrews, for that is loathsome to the Egyptians. So Joseph is sitting at another table. They're all at one table, and then the other Egyptian servants have their own space that they're going to eat. Now they were seated before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked at one another in astonishment. So how did he know the ages? The question there. He's sitting apart, but for some reason he has more awareness. And he took portions of them from his own table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs. So they feasted and drank freely with them. Then he commanded his men's sacks with food, saying, "Fill the men's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the mouth of his sack, and put my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest, and his money for the grain." And he did as Joseph had told him. As soon as it was light, the men were sent away, they with their donkeys. And they had just gone out. They had just gone out of the city and were not far off, when Joseph said to his house steward, "Up, follow the men. When you overtake them, say to them, 'Why have you repaid evil for good?'" So he sent him out, the steward, probably with some guards. So it was probably a pretty scary. Now he's playing the trick on them. And the steward says, "Is not this the one from which my lord drinks, which he indeed uses for divination? You have done wrong in doing this." So he overtook them and spoke these words to them. And they said to him, "Why does my lord speak such words as these? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing. Behold, the money which we found in the mouth of our sacks we have brought back to you from the land of Canaan. How then could we steal silver or gold from your lord's house? With whomever of your servants is found, let him die, and we also will be my servants' slaves." So now they're offering a promise of, hey, we're honest guys. They're going a little farther in their promise than they probably should have and needed to, because they're giving themselves over and putting themselves at risk. And they're also showing they had no idea what was going on. Then they hurried, each man lowered his sack to the ground, and each man opened his sack, and he searched, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore their clothes. That's a sign of despair. And when each man loaded his donkey, they returned to the city. So now Benjamin would be taken. They tore their clothes. They couldn't leave without Benjamin, so now they're following. When Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, he was still there, and they fell to the ground before him. So they lay prostrate. And Joseph said to them, "What is this deed that you have done? Do you not know that such a man as I can indeed practice divination? Don't you know that I know the things, that I can see things? So Judah said, What can we say to my Lord? What can we speak? And how can we justify ourselves? God has found out the iniquity of your servants. Behold, we are my Lord's slaves, both we and the one in whose possession the cup has been found. But he said, Far be it from me to do this. The man in whose possession the cup has been found, he shall be my slave. But as for you, go up in peace to your father. So he's testing. Are you going to abandon Benjamin like you did me? They don't know. They don't know this is Joseph. But Joseph is testing them. How much has your heart changed? Are you more worried about your own skin? All right. Then Judah approached him. O my lord, may your servant please speak a word in my lord's ears, and do not be angry with your servant, for you are equal to Pharaoh. My lord asked his servant, saying, Have you a father or a brother? Now, here they're saying the same way they said it to their brothers, but we know this was not how it all came about. And we said to my lord, We have an old father and a little child of his old age. Now, we know that Benjamin is not so little young. He's a young man, but he's not like a little child. Now his brother is dead, so he is alone is left of his mother, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, Bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes on him. But we said to my lord, The lad cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. You said to your servants, however, Unless your youngest brother comes down to you, you shall not see my face again. Thus it came about, when we went up to your servant my father, we told him the words of my lord. And our father said, Go back, buy us a little food. But we said, We cannot go down if our youngest brother is with us, then we will go down. For we cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. And your servant my father said to us, You know that my wife bore me 2 sons, and the one went out from me, and said, Surely he is torn to pieces, and I have not seen him since. And if you take this one also from me, and harm befalls him, you will bring my gray hair down to Sheol in sorrow. Now therefore, when I come to your servant my father, and the lad is not with us, since his life is bound up in the lad's life, it will come about, when he sees that the lad is not with us, that he will die. Thus your servants will bring the gray hair of your servant our father down to Sheol in sorrow. For your servant became surety for the lad to my father, saying, If I do not bring him back to you, then let me bear the blame before my father forever. Now therefore please let your servant remain, instead of the lad, a slave to my lord, and let the lad go up with his brothers. For how shall I go up to my father, if the lad is not with me, lest I see the evil that would overtake my father? So here we see a full transformation change over, where now Judah's offering up himself as the slave, saying, Hey, I will take the place of Benjamin. He is being the salvation figure. Now out of the line of Judah, we also know comes Jesus. So we are seeing an offering and a pointing towards one who will take upon himself all of our sin. And we can look through, as we look through this portion of that, it's just amazing to see how God is at work, showing the great difference between all the brothers from where they had been when they gave up, they sold Joseph to be as a slave, to where they are now, being under and humbled and under the thumb of their brother Joseph. Even though they don't know it, they're still being humbled. So as we go through this, it's always good. And if you have any thoughts, insights, or questions, always feel free to email or place something in the comments. I'd definitely love to hear back from you. And I am going to also look at times, figuring out as time goes on, opportunities in which I can do this live, where we can have some live discussions. If you like, you can always leave in the comments when you think times would work and when you'd like to watch this, if you're getting something out of this, where I can put it on there, and if you'd like to interact online. Also know you're always welcome. If you are local, you're always welcome to join me at Monday night Bible study from 6 to 7:30. I hope you enjoy this, and I look forward to seeing you again, coming back the next time. Until next week, remember that Jesus loves you, and so do I. Have a great week. God bless.